This is not go home and spend your next 2 days going through every possibility here, but this might be a nice page to come back to once you have a few favorites and you're ready for another layer of challenge. So just some different ideas with how you might represent in digital ways and in person with physical ways. So representing some of my favorites have been Jamboard, which I've talked about a little bit already, sort of like a visual whiteboard or bulletin board where you can add sticky notes and pictures and some comments, but it's a really sort of a user-friendly but not super detailed version of things. So WebPaint will allow you to annotate live web pages and save it as a PDF or photo file. So that can be really nice, especially for social teachers doing, current events, or bio teachers looking at experiments that have happened out there. You can definitely annotate those web pages and then save your work so students can show you their findings in a very visual, physical way. Google Slides has some great features. Diagrams and smart art can create some really beautiful visual relationships. They are a little bit tough to use. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you have a sense of how to select the object, often there's a physical shape and then there's a text box within that. So if you have a sense of how to manipulate those, then those visual relationships are really easy to run and to use. I've had students make their own infographics using those before, and it's just a really user-friendly program for that. Google Drive mentioned. Google Sites is a nice one. Weebly is another good one if you'd like a little bit more functionality. Google's fairly basic but very user-friendly. Weebly is also user-friendly. It's a drag and drop platform, but if you get into the paid versions, it does definitely ramp up the availability, but also the complexity. So what you're able to do is great, but what you now have to figure out how to do might be a little overwhelming for beginners. Wix, even more so. That's a real, you're completely the designer and creator for the most part. There is some drag and drop sort of features, but you're really working on a space that you have complete control over, unlike Weebly, which will limit where you're able to add some of the features. Sway, I've talked about a little bit already, something to experiment with Microsoft if you're ready to move beyond PowerPoint and create some more learning pathways. Maker's boxes can be a lot of fun. We've got a wonderful construction teacher who has put a few of these together, so we have some tools that students can actually use, big glue guns and some of the things that they might put together to make a proto. Tableau can be a fun way to visually represent. It's really just posing, but posing for particular reasons. Visual essays or narratives using symbols or pictures or things that represent in a visual way that's not really writing heavy, or maybe has just labeling rather than actual narrative or prose structures. Symbolic notation can be a lot of fun, especially if you're starting to work with the symbols that are emerging with all of the platforms coming out and all of the tech stuff. So what does that look like on a cell phone? What does the app screen look like? What can you do with all of those icons? For speaking, Google Meets, definitely. The breakout rooms are a lot of fun. And like I said, do we really need to be there for every student conversation? Probably not. Flipgrid is speaking, but with that added dynamic of visual representation with the viewability. Screencastify, as I'm using here, YouTube for vlogging. Do be cautious with the privacy settings there. So content produced for children has some different requirements, and if your students are sharing, they're going to want to probably have them set to private, and then they can share the link or password protect it as intended instead of putting themselves up there for the world to see. In person, speeches, monologues, dramatic readings, anything where you're able to tell the story verbally. We definitely are seeing with the TQS5 in our province, with the Truth and Reconciliation Council recommendations, this return to oral storytelling, and that can branch into all kinds of subject matter. It's not just for English. If you can explain it to a 6-year-old, you're an expert, and so why not put that to work in other places, that oral storytelling of the topic or the content.